Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Chef Jay's cooking channel. Today, we're going to make giant cinnamon rolls. But first, you'll notice my coffee's in the picture. It's very important that we mix the correct amount of Baileys with our coffee to make this recipe. This does not go in the recipe. We just need this to consume while we're making the recipe. Okay, guys. Let's start with, I've got a few things pre-measured out just because it makes it a little bit easier. What I have done first is I have taken 3/4 a cup of buttermilk with 6 tablespoons of butter. And I melted that in the microwave and I allowed it to cool down a little bit. You'll see it kind of separates as it cools. That's how you know it's about its right temperature, when your butter separates out from your buttermilk. And we're going to add that in a bit, but first of all, to our stand mixer fitted with a dough hook. Highly recommend everyone run out and get a KitchenAid stand mixer. They're wonderful. You can use them for anything. To this, we're going to add, again, pre-measured, 4 cups of flour, 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 1/4 teaspoons of instant yeast. That's typically 1 packet if you use the packets. I bake a lot, so I buy it by the pound. So that's what I use. That's my go-to. And 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt. Now we'll just put all of that, because it doesn't even matter how it goes in. We'll put all of that into our stand mixer, just like so. Let me get my coffee out of the way now, because now we need to test that. That's pretty good. Okay, to this we can go ahead and lower this. I'm going to lock it into place. Unfortunately, you are going to have to hear the whirring of this, because that's just how it goes. Okay, we've got all this in there. Let's go ahead and just give that a little mix up, because our yeast and sugar and all is in there. It kind of went to the bottom as we did that. Take a little wooden spoon and carefully just kind of help that stand mixer. Get that all around in there. You know, one thing I've actually written to KitchenAid about on these stand mixers, I noticed when you unlock it and you lift it up and you're messing with the dough hooks and stuff, this is your power switch over here. And, you know, sliding it back and forth like that turns it on, turns it up at a really high speed. I was thinking to myself the other day, man, that needs like a safety switch on it, because if you're messing with something and say it accidentally touches up against something, it'll pop on. Well, it did, and I had my hand up in my paddle hook the other day, and it almost jerked my fingers off. That was part of my video snafu that I didn't get to do anything for you guys because I was dealing with injured fingers. Okay, so we're back with that. We've given that a little mix. Now we're going to incorporate in our cooled down buttermilk and butter. And again, that's 3/4 cups of buttermilk and 6 tablespoons of butter. And I just melted it in the microwave and allowed it to cool. And then to that, we're going to add 3 eggs. And I'm telling you, we're just going to let this mix around. We've got 3 eggs, 3 large eggs. I crack them into a bowl because you never want your shells to get in there. We can go ahead and turn this up a bit because it's going to be making dough. I just didn't want all the flour to splash out because I didn't put my handy dandy little guard on. So let this incorporate all up. Got our nice little dough hook in there. This makes life so much easier, because if you had to do this by hand, oh child, you'd be going forever. This recipe is actually wonderful. We didn't put a whole lot of sugar in the dough. You really don't need that, because when you're mixing your cinnamon roll filling up, that is packed full of sugar. And you'll see that in another step. Could be that we need to add a little more liquid to this. Sometimes you'll notice that if you'll just watch your dough and how it does. Your humidity has a lot to do with that. I'm just going to add in a little more buttermilk into that, just to help bring all that together. I might not have had a full 3/4 of a cup when I measured it out, because I just kind of eyeballed it, and baking is important that you measure. Alright, and you can see this does its job. It'll whack that around there, it'll toss things around. You'll be having to sit on it. Like to kind of have fun. It's like sitting on the rinse cycle of a washer machine for you ladies out there. We might have to hold her down. Have to get my daddy to make me something to hold my little mixer down. Anyway, that's what you do with that. I'm not going to take it all the way on camera just because it's just too loud. I'm going to do this for about 10 more minutes. I just want you to see kind of what the dough looks like. I'm going to knead this for about 10 more minutes in the mixer, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what I like to break it off of here just so we can get another good mix on it when we drop this back down in there. Going to put it back down in there just like that. Lock it back down. It's very important because you see how it jumps around. I'm going to turn it back on and let it go for a little bit. And I'll come back when that's done and show you how we prepare the bowl to let it proof, because this dough does have to rise in a warm place for a little bit. So we shall be back. Okay guys, we're back. We let that go for about 10 minutes in the stand mixer until our dough got really smooth and elasticy. And you can tell it really doesn't stick to anything. It's very tacky. It comes right off. You can actually pull it away from the sides easily. I've taken a glass bowl and I've oiled it down. Actually, I sprayed it with non-stick cooking spray, which is fine. Or you can oil it or butter it, whatever you prefer. This has a lot of oil and butter in it anyway. Normally, I'd use a little dough scraper to pull the dough off the sides and put it down in here, but y'all probably don't have all that at home, so I don't have to get fancy with you. We can just pull it out of here with our hands. Now, for those of you that don't have a stand mixer or don't really want to spend the money to get one, I don't blame you. It's a lot of money. There's other things you could be buying. This can be done by hand. It takes a long time to knead the dough. You would probably need to do that by hand. I would say probably about 20 minutes. Yeah, definitely 20 minutes by hand. It's 10 by a stand mixer, so you would have to knead it for 20 minutes by hand. So you could do that and just forego your Zumba class or your Jane Fonda workout or whatever, because you're going to get that kneading this dough for 20 minutes until it gets smooth and elasticy. Toss it around in here just to kind of coat all the sides and shape it into a nice little ball. Put it in here, and then we're just going to let it rest. Look, it's all nice and pretty, coming out smooth, and I just take and tuck that under until I have a nice smooth surface, because when this rises, all of this is going to get up under there anyway. Okay, kind of close the bottom up like that. Put them back in there just like that. Now this should double, or I usually let it triple in size just because that makes a lighter bread once it bakes. But we're going to cover this with plastic wrap. I'm going to put it in a warm place and let it rise for about, again, the temperature in your kitchen or where you're letting it rise will greatly affect the amount of time that is required. So it's probably going to take me about an hour. I've got the kitchen pretty warm just because it's so cold outside, guys. Good Lord. What the hell? So anyway, going to cover this, going to let it rise for a bit, and we'll come back and I'll show you the next part. While this is rising, you need to set out an entire stick of butter. One whole stick of butter is going to be laid out to get to room temperature, because when we roll our dough out after it rises and we take it out and we roll it out flat into a rectangle, we take this softened butter and we're just going to rub it all over like we're loving on it with some butter. And then after we do that, we'll top it with a brown sugar and cinnamon mixture that we're going to make. I may put nuts in it, I don't know. I've got some pecans and walnuts. Either one are great in it. Almonds are also great in it if you prefer almonds. So anyway, let's let this rise and we'll come back and do the next step in just a bit. Okay guys, welcome back. As you can tell, our dough has risen more than double in size. I told you I let it get about 3. This is probably about 4 times in size because I just took a break. I've got my table nice and floured here, and we're going to spread the dough out on it. And basically at this point you can see it's nice and light and airy. You can actually take and give it a little punch down, let the air out. But we're going to dump it out on our floured surface. That comes out nicely. Let me get this out of the way. Okay, and now we're going to roll this out. I'm going to put it in a rectangle shape. Let's get my sleeves out of the way. Put this in a rectangle shape. I'm going to just take our rolling pin, roll it into a nice, I would say about let's measure this here in a minute. See what we come out with. I just kind of do it by sight again. Y'all, I'm not all about exact. I mean, in baking, I try to be exact with ingredients because that is important. But when I'm measuring stuff out like this, I just kind of eyeball it, decide when it's enough, and that's enough. And if y'all remember, before we started this process, we put some butter out to get soft so we could spread it on our dough. Bring that out a little bit more. It's okay to work with it with your hands. Don't be afraid. And before we started this process, I put a cup of brown sugar and about 3 teaspoons of cinnamon together. And that's a cup of very well packed brown sugar and about 3 teaspoons of cinnamon. And I mixed it all together. We got that in a bowl to set aside 1 second, but we want to take our softened butter, and this is messy and fun. Let me pop my rings off a second, because those don't need to be up in here. And I just take little pieces of it, and then we just love on it with some butter. Just love on it. Make sure you get everything covered, because that's what you want. You want this whole thing just covered. Remember, this is your dough. You're putting the moisture back into it with the butter, the buttery goodness. It's going to help that bread after it's cooked just pull apart. It's going to be nice. I know y'all are thinking, oh Lord, that's a heart attack. Well, it is, but you know, if you don't eat one of these every day, you're all right. You have these in moderation. I feel like anything you do in moderation, don't deny yourself the good things in life, because that's just wrong. You know, we're only here for a short amount of time anyway. Let's make the best of it. All right, going to get all this off our fingers. That'll kind of happen too when we're spreading this out. We're going to take our mixture, our brown sugar mixture, and we're just going to put it all over. Just like that again, just rubbing and loving on it. Don't be afraid to get your hands messy, because you can scrape it all off. Make sure your hands are clean. Folks that are going to eat this do appreciate that you do have clean hands before starting this, especially since you're all up in it. Now what we call this is called made with love. When you put your hands all up in it and you really get down and dirty with your cooking and touch your food and stuff, hey, as long as your hands are clean and you're doing it the right way, you're putting love into it. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all. That makes it that much better. Folks know you did put your heart and soul into it. And that's what makes food taste good. Because you take your time to do it. And it's just wonderful. Alright. We've got this all. Get that little bit back on there. We've got this all laid out here. Now we're going to take and we want to roll it. We're going to roll it kind of tight. You can see our flour's there. You just kind of have to work with it a bit. Get it to go up in there. Keep it nice and uniform. Don't worry about getting anything dropped off or spread out. It's all right. It's all good. And we're just going to kind of tuck this together. Pinch it down closed because close up this end right here. Close up this end over here, long way down. Pinch this together, and we're going to cut this long ways. Now, at this point, if you wanted to make, this is the point I was telling you on my Facebook, if you wanted to make individual cinnamon rolls, you absolutely could. You would cut them at this point this way. Now, what we're going to do to this, we're going to cut this lengthwise, right down the middle. And it's going to come apart, and it's going to look all goopy. But we've got our pans here. We just kind of set that over there. Spread this out a little more. This looks fun. We'll just say that. Okay. Oh, I forgot to pull my knife out beforehand. I'll slide that out of there. All right, normally I would use a serrated knife, but I did forget to pull it out of the drawer, so let's give this a try. Now I have two cake pans, that I sprayed with cooking spray, non-stick cooking spray. Now these just kind of lay open. And we're going to get that out of the way. And we're going to take this, and it's easy. Keep your pan close, because you're going to take this layer and you're just going to coil it up in here. And it's all right. You're like, oh, she's spilling everything out. That's okay. You get it in there. You're going to spill some stuff. This is kind of messy. And then you just kind of stand your layers back up when you get it in there. Sometimes I get it in a little better than that without all the mess. Now we're going to let this rise one more time. I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap, and then I'm going to allow this to rise one more time till it gets nice and puffy the way I want it. That's why we don't worry too much with how it looks in the pan. Well, let me do the other one. We'll see if we can be a little more gentle with this one. Getting it in the pan. Coil this baby around like a snake. Alright. Don't be afraid. Remember, I told you, you're going to get your hands dirty when you're cooking. That's alright. That's made with love. Okay. Now we're going to cover these. Oops. We're going to cover these, and we're going to allow them to rise. They'll get nice and fill up the pan, and then at that point we'll bake them. So after that process happens, I will come back and we will finish this off. Be right back, guys. Okay, guys, we're back, and you can tell we have let these rise after we coiled them in the pan. We covered them, let them rise. They puffed up nicely. Now it's time to bake them. And this is what they look like prior to baking. Nice and still, moist in here. So we've preheated our oven to 350 degrees. We're going to bake them for about 25 minutes, just until they're nice and golden brown on top. And then we'll come back and we'll remove them from the pan, frost them while they're still warm, and get them to where they're supposed to go. Hope y'all enjoy these. Be back soon. Okay, we're back. While our cinnamon rolls are baking, we're going to go ahead and mix up the icing. With this, what I've got in a bowl right now is just about a cup and a half of powdered sugar. To that, I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons. I'm using half and half. You can use buttermilk. You can use regular milk. It doesn't really matter. So that's about 3 tablespoons of half and half. I'm going to whisk this around just to make a nice little icing. You want all of your powdered sugar incorporated, and this is just a basic go-to icing. Sometimes I add in about a teaspoon of hot water to it just before I go to put it on my cinnamon roll. It just kind of loosens this a bit and makes it pour over it a little bit easier. But your cinnamon roll is going to be hot, because remember I told you we're gonna frost it while it's at least warm. because you want this to kind of melt all over it and run down. Now you can also flavor this if you wanted an orange flavored cinnamon roll in with your brown sugar and cinnamon mix. You could have grated some orange zest into it, and to even add a little more orange flavor, you could make this with orange juice as your liquid instead of the milk. So just a thought. Or a combination of milk and orange juice gives you that creamsicle flavor that a lot of people really like. I'm not a fan, but, you know, people like it. I don't judge. Okay, guys, and that's about the consistency of the frosting we're going to be putting over our cinnamon rolls, and it'll melt in nicely. And then as the rolls cool, it'll harden. And honestly, if you don't eat it all in one sitting, you just heat the cinnamon roll up and cut you a wedge off and heat it up in the microwave for just a few seconds. Yes, I said the M word. I'm not a fan of microwave use, but on occasion, one must use it. It actually does heat the cinnamon rolls nicely if you do it for just a few seconds. Oops. And that's what we don't do. Anyway, for just a few seconds. So mishaps are going to happen on here, and we're going to roll with it because, like I said, I don't have a professional studio up in here, so we don't do all that cut and cut that out. So y'all get to see all that. However, I will not be using that in my frosting. So we're going to pull the cinnamon rolls from the oven and come back and we'll frost them up. And I'll show you how good they are. Be right back, guys. Okay, we're back, and as you can tell, we've just taken one of our giant cinnamon rolls out of the oven. Now, what I'm going to do, it is still very hot in the pan. It just came out. That's when they lift out the easiest. You just have to get up under it. And then we're going to slide it over to this plate. Whoops. Sometimes you might have to put it back together. That is okay. Don't worry. That just means you've got a good roll. And that's how it comes out. Just look at that. Now, with this, when I was putting the brown sugar and cinnamon and the butter on the dough, you could also sprinkle chopped nuts on of your flavor, of your preference, whether it be pecans, walnuts, whatever you prefer up in here, and bake it that way. You roll it and bake it. I left the nuts out of this one. I don't know why. Just to simplify things. But you can do it if you want. Be kind of generous with the frosting, because we all know we order extra dipping sauce when we get stuff that comes with frosting, because it's just good. Can't help it. Alright, just let that drizzle around. You could also put a little bit of vanilla in here, or other flavoring if you prefer. Look at that. And there you have it. That's it. That's number one. We'll come back in just a second and go ahead and decorate number two. But, I'll give you an idea. Look at that. Just beautiful. Okay, we've got roll number two on the plate. Gonna go ahead and frost that up. And again, left the nuts out of these, but you could even put it in the frosting if you want. It's gonna make it a little crunchy though. If you break somebody's tooth, they might get a little mad at you. At least they soften a bit when you bake them. Still, this is wonderful. Nice cup of coffee. And I know it seems like a long process, but it's really not. You're just sitting and waiting on the dough to rise. You're off doing other things. If you kneaded it by hand, you're probably taking a nap. But if you have the little KitchenAid mixer with the dough thing, you're good to go. But that's it, guys and gals. And I'll show you when you serve this. I tell you, I just slice it up like a pie. Turn it around. Everybody's like, oh, hell no, I want a bigger piece than that. Well, you know, you come back for a second. But look how that baked up. And then you just pull it apart and eat it. Yummy. Okay, guys. We're going to put that back in there and pretend like that didn't happen. There you have it. Giant cinnamon rolls. I'll post the recipe in a bit, guys. Enjoy.